literally had like 24 hours to decide whether or not I was going to get on a plane and go to Cyprus and then try and deliver what they had collected was 3 tons of medical supplies to the people of Gaza. Actually, honestly, I didn't think about myself, but I did think about my mother. And so I called my mom and my dad, and you know, they weren't too pleased with the idea. And so I said, Paul, you got to deal with my mama and my daddy. So Paul called my mother and said, well, you know, the boat is called the Dignity. It's made 5 trips successfully. There's no way there's anything that's going to happen to your daughter. So my mother still didn't feel quite right. Paul, and he never told me the full extent of all of the conversations. I know he did a handhold with my mom. Now, probably you don't have to convince him too much of anything. He'll go along with it if it's an adventure. So I knew that at least half of my nuclear family was going to be okay. So as long as I had half, I was cool. So I said to Paul, yes, I'll go. So Paul then makes arrangements for me to get to Cyprus. I go by my mom and dad because I do recognize that there is some danger and that I might not see them again. And so I at least want to say, you know, I was a good mother. And I tried to do things the way you taught me to do things and to live up to the values that you instilled into me. And my mom asked me at that point not to go again. My father told me to write everything down, and I'm not a good diarist, but I did buy a diary so I could write everything down. And then the last thing he said as I walked out the door was, "You'll be sitting ducks." And then I left for the airport. And everything was wonderful. When we got to Cyprus, I was immediately whisked to the port. There were journalists from all over the world who were waiting for us. We did an impromptu press conference. We did the press conference that was organized. Then we boarded the boat. Now, you know, I might have gone to USC that had, you know, I think his name was Spitzer and he was a swimming champion. But I'm from Georgia. And I'm from Atlanta in Georgia. So we are like landlocked. And the last thing I think about doing is going swimming. The last thing I think about doing is getting on a boat. I have never put a life jacket on. And I'll tell you that in the midst of this ordeal that we endured, it was discovered that I had my life jacket on upside down. I didn't tell you that, Paul. So, first person who gets sick is the CNN reporter. We're on the boat, CNN reporter gets sick. So he goes out, and then they gave us some more orders, and they said, well, it's not really the smartest thing for you to go out and, you know, because you might flip over. So then we all got bowls and plastic bags. And so the CNN reporter goes down. Then the next one to go down, oh, I should, you know, this is all males, and they might have their pride hurt. But then Samuel Haj, who was Guantanamo prisoner number 345, because he happened to be covering Afghanistan for Al Jazeera, and the Americans captured him. He was a prisoner for 6 years. I did apologize to him for, you know, the actions of my government. And he was the second one to go down. And I just looked at them, and the doctor, I positioned myself right next to the English doctor. One, we had language in common, but he was also a doctor. And he went down. The surgeon, who also happened to be a member of the Cyprus Parliament, she went down. Everybody went down. And guess what? To this day, I still haven't experienced seasickness. That's what they tell me. Well, anyway, we're, you know, everything is successful. And then it's night and we're trying to go to sleep. And then all of a sudden there's a spotlight that gets shined on us. And you know, we figure maybe it's a fisherman. The spotlight then goes away. And so we say, okay, we're safe again. We'll go back to sleep. Then, out of nowhere, comes the spotlight again. And this time we can see it's a huge ship. And so we figured, well, it's not a fisherman. And then we saw another ship. And then we saw another ship. We were surrounded by huge, great, big warships. And then all of a sudden, it dropped back. The English physician that I had parked myself next to was cursing because it was the United States that had provided the engines to Israel for those ships so that they could come and go so quickly, so quietly, and threaten and menace us in the manner in which they were doing. Then it's all dark, all quiet, and then all of a sudden, bam, 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 and all of our bowls are flying everywhere, bodies flying everywhere, we were like scrambling. The English physician who was next to me said, prepare to die. And so that's what I did. I mentally prepared myself for death. And the first thing I thought about was all of that water out there that I was about to experience. I was gonna feel it. And then that's when they noticed that my life jacket was upside down. I don't know how I put that thing on upside down, but I had it on wrong, and so everybody helped me and made sure I had my life jacket on correctly. And I thought about my son and the fact that I had given most of my life to public service and I hadn't really done motherly things. And I said, well, at least my son will know that I died doing something that was an expression of my values, of how I feel, how I want to live my life. So I was cool with that. And then I had this vision of like our bodies out there and which one of us or ones of us would survive. And for some reason I just kept feeling like I was going to get crushed in between the warship and the boat. Of course, it never happened because we had a captain who was absolutely phenomenal. Over 20 years as a captain of a pleasure boat. And so he had experience, and he came back to us and told us what the conditions were. After we had been hit, the Israelis contacted us and told us to go back to Larnaca, even though they said they didn't know who we were. That's what they said in the press. But to us, they told us to go back to Larnaca, which meant that they knew where we had come from. And the captain told them, no.